All right, good morning. Testing, testing. Can you hear me? All right. Welcome. Welcome to Kaysville Bible Church. Find your seat. We are into June, I think, 2 Sundays into, or no, not June, August. I mean, that's what happens. I was at camp all week, and I don't know where I am. Do a cheer? Yeah, the blue team won, so go blue. Okay. All right. Well, glad to be with you this morning. This is kind of a unique day for us as we have the opportunity to get to meet a missionary family that is planning to go back overseas. So that we have the Ramos family here today, Diego Ramos and his wife Kezia and their daughters Olivia and Joanna. And just a brief update, and a brief introduction, and Diego can kind of fill you in on the details. Diego and I reconnected sometime over, was it last year or summer? He reached out to the church as they began their preparation to go back to Brazil. They're native Brazilian. Diego and I overlapped together in seminary and graduated at the same time. We're reminded that we suffered through or survived Aramaic together, and Diego, after graduating in 2014, went back to Brazil, served in initially theological education, teaching and training, and then pastoral ministry, and through a series of events, which part of that was the big world scene of COVID, shutting down some other plans, really compelled and I think made it evident to Diego his desire and giftedness to be even further equipped to be involved in theological education in Brazil. And he'll kind of tell you more of those details and what, just as far as the need there in a nation like Brazil. And so that led him back to the States. And so they've been back here in the States for a little over 3 years, I believe. He's serving on staff at a church in Idaho, so First Baptist Church of Meridian, Idaho. Has been able to serve there while he has been finishing his Master of Theology and beginning the process for his PhD, which he'll be finishing the work for that as he transitions back to Brazil. And so we're thankful for the ways that the Lord has gifted them and prepared them for this next aspect of ministry, and look forward for you to get to know them and hear how the Lord has led them. So I'm going to ask Diego to come.
Good morning. Can you hear me well? Okay. So it's a pleasure to be here. We thank you for the opportunity to receive us, and we thank Phil and Pastor Tommy and Andrew and the staff here for opening that door for us to be with you this morning and to present what the Lord has prepared for us in terms of returning to our home country of Brazil. So, my name is Diego. Our younger daughter is not here in the room, Olivia, and we have my wife and daughter on this side here, Joanna, our oldest daughter, and my wife, Kezia. We just celebrated 19 years of marriage last July, and so we've been married since 2007, and so we were both 20-year-olds when we got married. And so now I want to, the slide presentation that you have before you is our plans going forward, but I would also start this time of the Sunday school to talk about a little bit about our history and how we got to this point that we want to move forward. So as far as my testimony of how I came to know the Lord, I didn't grow up in a Christian home. My mom came to know the Lord when I was 2 years old, but most of my family both on my mom's side and also on my father's side. They are Catholics, and so still to this day, my mom is the only believer in the house besides me. And so that's the environment I grew up. But she came to know the Lord when I was 2, and so she took me and my older brother and to church, and during that time in Sunday school, Sunday school teacher would present the story of Jesus and make an appeal for the children to receive the Lord as Savior, to accept Jesus. And during that time, 5, 6 years old, I accepted Jesus a few times in Sunday school, and which did not necessarily make me into a super believer who converted many times, but I would say most likely and as still a deceived unbeliever. There was something in the story of Jesus that touched me as a child, but during my teenage years, I didn't walk with the Lord, and my desire was more to please my friends and to do the things that they enjoyed doing, and so that's where my heart was. There was still that sense that these people here in the church are the ones who will go to heaven, so I want to be somewhat associated with them, but that's not what my heart was. I wanted kind of an insurance, having one foot in the church, and so, but I was not really committed to the Lord. And so it was only when I was 17 that I was barred from going to one of the camps at the church. I wanted to enjoy the good things of the church, and camp was one of them. And so I was barred from going because of I was going to church once in a while, but mostly not giving a good testimony. People outside the church associated me with the church and as a believer, and that was not a good testimony. And so I was the Saturday youth event, youth meeting that after that camp, I went to the youth meeting, and after that, the leadership confronted me regarding my life and my belief and my behavior, and so that was the night that I understood my condition, understood my sin and my need for Christ, and when I committed my life to Christ at that point. So I believe that was the point of my conversion. That was not just an outward profession of faith, but a heart commitment to follow Jesus and to live for Jesus. And so that was in 2004, and that was about the time as well that I was deciding to go to college, and my best friend from childhood who today is the pastor of that church, and he was going to a Bible Institute in the same year that I was going to college. He gave me a book written by an American missionary with Baptist Mid Missions, who had a ministry with apologetics ministry, specifically teaching about creation in schools and universities, on Bible camps for youth. And so he wrote a book on creationism, how to defend the faith, and how creation shows the glory of God. And there was some points in talking about science as well, some arguments from science. His first degree was in biology, and then he had a master's degree in ministry. And so he wrote that book, and at the end, he made an appeal to young believers to consider following a career in science, to give a biblical perspective on science, to study science from the perspective that God created the world, and so that call from that book was one that impacted my decision as far as going to college. And so my older brother was doing science. He's not a believer, but he was doing physics at the time. And so I decided, because on the one hand, because of my brother, because he already knew what to study and how to get ready, and he had some of the books, and that was part of the decision. But the other was the appeal of that book by that American missionary. So I decided to go to college to do physics, and to somehow use that to help the church, to help believers, and to have a biblical perspective on those issues. 4 months before I went to college, I met Kezia, my wife. And so we started dating 3 months before I moved to the capital of my state. And so we dated for 2.5 years from a distance. And in my last year of the college degree, we got married, and we lived for 1 year in the city of Fortaleza. That's the capital of the state. And we went back to after graduation, we went back to the region where we grew up, which is 3 hours away, still on the coast of the state, but 3 hours away from Fortaleza. And so when we got there, my friend was off to the Bible Institute that he was studying theology, and the church had gone through some changes, and there was a need for a couple to lead the youth group. And so the pastor asked if we would be willing to lead that. And so that was something that changed our perspective somewhat and our directions. So we took that ministry, and we started leading the youth, and I started teaching on a weekly basis, and not with. I did not know exactly what I was doing, so God was gracious in that. And so a friend of ours also around that time gave me some CDs from Grace to You with 3 sermons on the book of James, and I was starting to learn English. And so started to listen to those CDs, and there was John MacArthur preaching on the book of James, and at the end it's talked about you can find more on gty.org. And so I went to the website and found more, and so I guess I'm going to teach the book of James. And so the commentary that I had was MacArthur's transcripts on Grace to You, and so that was what I was using, and teaching the same sequence that he was teaching. And so that got us involved in ministry. My wife grew up in a pastor's home, and so she was always somewhat involved with ministry, and at certain levels. And it was in 2009, so 2 years after we were 2 years married, and there was in the same camp that had the youth camps. In that year, they had a pastor's retreat, pastors and leaders retreat. And so my wife and I went, and my father-in-law was pastor in a church at the time. We went together to that retreat, and the people who were preaching there were one was a TMS graduate who was pastoring a church in Hutchinson, Kansas. And his father, he was pastoring a church in Kansas City. And and the translator was a missionary kid who was studying at master's at the time. So he spoke Portuguese and spoke English, and so he was translating. And so at that time we were serving in that ministry. I was teaching science in a high school, and I shared with that missionary kid about my initial desire to somehow use science to help believers in the area of apologetics and creationism, and that my friend, that missionary kid, told me one thing that redirected our steps, and it was, Diego, if you want to teach about doctrine of creation well, you don't need to know primarily science well. You need to know primarily the Bible well. And especially if you know the original languages, and you can present that from the perspective of the original writings. And so that led to a conversation about what he was studying at Master's Seminary, and then to a conversation with these other two pastors. One of them had done a MDiv and a Doctor of Ministry at Master's. And and I received from the pastor who went to preach my first MacArthur Study Bible in English, and so it was not translated into Portuguese at the time. And so in December that year, I requested information from Masters, and so I got back in the mail some information, and I applied, decided to apply, and in January of 2010, we were accepted on a provisional basis. They asked me to do some DVD courses to assess my potential in terms of probably giving me a scholarship and finding a way to make it financially possible for me to go. And so I did 2 courses over one in the spring and one over the fall of 2010, and Old Testament Studies 1 and 2, the survey. And so they decided at the end of that process they would give me a scholarship and then the on-campus job, and a lot of other people got involved in making that possible as well, including that missionary kid and his family. So that's, let me open a parenthesis here, and this is a flashback because after that we went to seminary. But that missionary kid is from a family that were missionaries in Brazil since the 1960s, and so he is a 3rd generation. So his grandparents, that's the name of the family is the Nichols. So his grandparents started a ministry of church planting in the interior of the state of where I grew up, and one of the first converts was my wife's grandmother, and it was in a city that was very strongly Catholic, very strongly. The believers, Protestants, were persecuted. Like if they were meeting in a house and having a worship time, some people would throw rocks on the roof, and there was some persecution during that time from the Catholic Church. And I would say if you compare it to New Testament times, it was like somebody being barbed from the synagogue in a certain level as well, like the Pharisees would do with people who broke the law, who followed Jesus. And so there was, and so there was that type of religiosity that was there in Brazil at the time. Today, you can still find that it's very small towns. They're religious in that cultural sense, that very strong. But in general, that's not a reality anymore in terms of the relationship between Catholics and Protestants. But that was the reality, and her grandmother came to know the Lord. Her grandfather was very opposed, and they had 7 kids. One was not living with them, but they had the six kids were living with them, and she had breast cancer. And she died very young at 46. So Kez's mother was the oldest of the daughters. She was 16 at the time. And then another was 15 and 14. And then there were 3 boys. One was 3, 5, and 7 years old. Those were the ages of the children. And so when she was close to pass away, she requested the Nichols family to, if they could raise her 6 kids, because if they were left with the father would not allow them to go to church. When I think Kez's mom was already a believer at the time, and one of the aunts was also a believer, and so they asked permission to the father, and so the father, there was a lot of reluctance from his side, but the kids wanted to move with the Nichols, because especially the oldest daughters that were already believers, so they wanted to, and so they ended up raising the 6 along with the 6 kids that they had, and so that's the story of the family that's there, that that missionary kid that helped us was not just a random person. It was somebody who had a history with Kez's side of the family, and some of the uncles and aunts helped also in raising support for us to be able to come to the U.S. along with the efforts that the seminary were making on their side, and so that was what made possible for us to come to Masters in August of 2011. So we came the same semester, the fall of 2011, when Phil came along and some of our classmates at that time. So we did our MDiv and there, and we returned to Brazil in 2014, right after our graduation, and got involved in the first ministry got involved was in the area of theological education and leadership training, and got involved with the seminary that I'm going to be involved there, Sibima, and also other schools that exist in the state, and so took the opportunities to teach at seminary level in different classes. I taught pretty much about everything from theology classes, systematic theology classes, to biblical language classes, and biblical geography classes, and biblical theology during those years. And so that was the primary focus of our ministry during those first 6 years, and that was from 2014 up to 2019, right before COVID. And during that time, we got connected with a church in Florida that had a ministry with Brazilians. There is a huge Brazilian population in Florida. Probably around 500,000 Brazilians live in between South Florida and the Orlando area, and so that was this church in South Florida that had was a church of 1,200 in attendance, and they had about 70 Brazilians in the church, and they had a small group as well in Portuguese, and so the group was big enough that the pastors thought it would be good to have somebody leading that group, and so we started working in 2019 about moving to that ministry, and so the church requested a visa for us, and there was a process should last 6 months normally, and it was in January of 2019, December of 2019, January of 2020, that we moved to where we grew up. At that time, the first 6 years we were in Fortaleza, that's the capital. And we moved to the interior where our families were, so to be close, because in 3 months we would have our visa and would be in Florida. And so it was when COVID hit. And so our interview was postponed 3 months, and then 3 months, and then 3 months. And so we were going to that church, and to the church where my wife grew up, and so they received a pastor in about the same time in January of 2019, and the pastor left. It was his first year, was the year of COVID, and the pastor left at the end of that year, and so and we were still there waiting for our visa, and when that happened, they were in search for another pastor, and there was something that happened with a candidate that, like the night before the vote, he was compelled to stay at the church where he was because some situations came up, the leadership requested, so he relinquished his candidacy, and so the church was kind of in a position where they were very perplexed, and so we knew that church for a long time, and my wife grew up there, and they knew me. And so the leadership came and asked if I would take the ministry, or at least help them in a period of transition and during the time. And I was reluctant about that. We were both reluctant about it because we're still in that process. In 3 months, we might not be here anymore. And so there was, every 3 months, there was a delay. And so we might not be here in 3 months or 6 months. So it doesn't make sense. And so they insisted, and I said, wow, we can help in an interim fashion. And if you have in mind that we might not be here in 3 or 6 months. And so we took that ministry and started working on a transition from day one, like mentoring some younger men that were going to the Bible Institute, and working with other men who had a ability to lead the church, and so from day when teaching the church about church leadership, church government, and ecclesiology, and helping the guys to improve in their preaching as well. And so what was supposed to last only 3-6 months ended up lasting for 2 years, because the church in Florida as well went from 1,200 in attendance to 400, 500 during COVID times. And so they couldn't keep up the offer anymore. And so instead of that, they started supporting our family there in Brazil, instead of having us come over. And a lot of the Brazilians who lived there, Florida became very expensive after COVID, like most of the U.S., but Florida, the big cities especially. And so a lot of Brazilians moved because they now had remote jobs. They could move anywhere, so they moved to places that were cheaper to live. And so it didn't make sense anymore. And so we ended up staying 2 years in that ministry. And towards the end, my wife and I were talking and evaluating, comparing our first 6 years of ministry and those last 3 years with 2 leading the church, and seeing, especially evaluating our family situation and my giftedness and all of those things. And one of the realizations that we came during that time was that my strongest gifts are in the area of teaching and training, and so that's what led to the decision that I needed to be more equipped. If we were going to serve primarily in the area of leadership training and theological education in general, I needed to be more prepared to that. And so that's why we decided at the end of those 2 years that we would leave the church to the leadership that we had put together during that time, and that we would try to go back to pursue further education. And so we announced that to our supporting churches, and one of them, the church in Meridian, Idaho, they had already a plan that the associate pastor would leave in August of 2022, and we already had a conference scheduled to go to that area, invited by another church in the area. That the churches every November they put together a conference for 3 Sundays. The 10 churches there of the same association there. They put together a conference. They invite 8-9 missionaries that rotate among the churches during those Sundays. And so we were invited that year of 2022 to go there. And but in July, when we made that announcement and we started the conversations, and that church had a perspective that they would need an associate pastor in a few months. When we went in November of 2022 for that missions conference, the conversations with the elders of the church went in the direction, well, you have the desire to come back to continue your studies, your THM and your PhD, and we are in need of an associate pastor. We are a missionary supported by our church, and so why don't we combine the two things together? Like, you come as an associate pastor, and we support your studies. And so that was the conversation that went on during that time in November. And so they met after we left to decide whether that was the direction that they would go. And so in December, they invited us to come back for candidating. And so we came in January of 2023 to candidate. That was a roller coaster. We're leaving the church that we were at this in December. And so in January, we had a candidate, 2 weeks of candidacy at that church. And so and we had just been there in November, and so we came in January for those 2 weeks, and met with the families of the church, preached, and so in February they voted for us to come, and in March of that 2023 we came. So it was non-stop, November, December, January, selling our stuff in Brazil, and leaving the ministry there, coming to candidate, and going for a visa in the consulate in Brazil. And so in March, I guess we should apply for the Guinness Book for some category, because it was kind of everything just happened, one thing at a time, right at we couldn't believe that was going on in that way. So we came in 2023 to join the church, and have had just a joyful ministry there with a church that is very loving and missions-minded, and very receptive to us and to our ministry there as well, despite being foreigners and having an accent. And so it's been a great time. And so during this time we finished my THM in Old Testament there at the Masters. Was going every 2 weeks, and every two times a year for 2 weeks each time, and finished last May my THM, and started the PhD program also in Old Testament. And since now we don't need to be so frequent at the seminary for the education, we decided that this was a good time to go back. We can, because I'm in December. By December of this year, I'll be in the writing phase of the doctorate program, and so we can do that from there. Come once a year, probably for defending chapters or presenting chapters of my dissertation, and so we decided this was a good time for us to go, and that's the goal for us to go in December. So that's looking back up to this point where we are here. And so we want to talk about now for the next 20-some minutes about what are our plans. And so I came to be more equipped in the area of theological education and training of pastors and church leaders, church planters, missionaries that Brazilian churches will send. So what does that look like for us? And so our mission is to equip the next generation of pastors and church planters and Christian leaders, following 2 Timothy 2:2, where Paul says to Timothy, "What you have heard from me among many witnesses, you entrust that to faithful men who will entrust to others also." So Paul describes a generational passing of the baton of the doctrine of the pure doctrine of the Scriptures, and so he himself has imparted that to Timothy, and he is calling Timothy to find some faithful men and impart that to those faithful men, and those faithful men are being called to find other faithful men, and just keep going that cycle of transferring and imparting sound doctrine to others. And so we want to be part of that line, and we have received much from faithful men, both in the seminary where we were, and at the church where we were, and where a lot of our learning happened as well. So the preparation that I came to seek did not happen just at the seminary; it happened also at the church. And so we've learned a lot from our elders and our senior pastor, and so we want to entrust that to others. And so that's the mission. The vision is to strengthen the church in Brazil and beyond within the Portuguese-speaking world through faithful theological education, grounded in the authority of Scripture. And helping people to move from the surface level teaching to rigorous theological teaching, helping pastors to be fully equipped to preach the word with clarity, with precision, with passion, to help churches mature theologically, to fight against the winds of false doctrines that blow through everywhere. What you see in the U.S. here in terms of false doctrine that abounds in many churches, it's the same thing that is exported to Brazil, and a lot of things that is being exported from Brazil to nations where we are sending our own missionaries is also false doctrine. It's so it just keeps going, just as there is a virtuous cycle, passing what we receive from faithful men to other faithful men who teach to other faithful men also. There is also a vicious cycle of false doctrine. What gets generated here in the West in terms of false doctrine gets exported to other countries and to other countries, and we find our own ways to corrupt it a little bit more, and so that's just a vicious cycle that happens, and we need men that are prepared to withstand that. Part of the work of a pastor is, according to Titus 1, is not just to teach the word faithfully, but also to defend against false doctrines. Titus 1 talks about that the pastor needs to be ready also to contradict those who oppose to sound doctrine. And so that's what we want. The Brazilian church is a church that is multiplying, is self-replicating, and I think we are, their Brazilian churches are planting other churches in parts of the country where there's less churches. They're sending missionaries to other places, but what I would say that the greatest need in the Brazilian church at this point is theological maturity, and there is less of a need of groundbreaking work, of pioneers for the gospel, in terms of missionaries from other countries going to Brazil, and there is more of a need of those who will equip and to help the church to mature. Brazil is a huge country, and so there is different needs in different parts of the country. And so there are still places in Brazil where pioneer work is still necessary, but in general, I would say that the church the churches are self-replicating, and they are able to go to those places and inside of Brazil, and even send missionaries to other nations as well, and pass that along. So why Brazil? The first reason is because that's our home country, and we speak the language, and we know the culture, and we're going to a place where we know the people, we have the connections, and so it's just a natural thing for us to go back to the place where we came and help the church there develop from the level that it is now. And so besides that, Brazil has a massive harvest, a nation of over 200 million people, probably reaching 220 million people in population today. So it's really a continental country in both in size and in its population. And Brazil has also become a global sender of missionaries. Today, the U.S. is still the country that sends most missionaries to the world, but Brazil is now the second country that sends most missionaries to the world, with South Korea being a close third. Brazil has surpassed South Korea just a few years ago, but those are the three nations in the world that sends most missionaries to the world. And so there is an advantage for Brazilians over American missionaries in certain countries, because there are certain countries where American passport is not welcome, whereas a Brazilian passport is welcome. And so some mission agencies from the U.S. are partnering with mission agencies from Brazil to send Brazilian missionaries either along with American missionaries or instead of American missionaries to certain places where there is more restrictions. So that that's a strategic way of reaching the world, not directly. And we praise the Lord for those who have that vision. This is not about just sending American missionaries. This is about sending the gospel, and it doesn't matter if our flag is planted in a place. It matters that the name of Christ is being preached and exalted. And so in that way, there is a strategic impact of training Brazilian leaders and sending good material instead of sending trash to the world. And so that's why we need to send quality people, and to have them to be equipped there, and to be able to be good pastors, good church planters, good theologians in other nations, and pass on the faithful teaching of God's word. And by the way, talking about passports, in terms of statistics, Brazilian passports is also one of the most counterfeited in the world, because of acceptance in the countries, but also because Brazil is such a mixed country in terms of the cultures that inhabit there, and there is not segregation in terms of there is you don't have a pure Brazilian in terms of his appearance or the culture, because it's also mixed. We have the biggest population of Japanese outside of Japan, one of the biggest population I think the biggest population of Syrians and Lebanese outside of Syria, and one big population of Jews and Italians and Germans. If you go to the extreme south of Brazil, in some parts you will think you are in Germany. They have their own Oktoberfest there as well, and so there are some communities that the primary language of schools is German, and some communities where there is Ukrainian, and so there is just this melting pot of people, and so you can look to anybody and say, oh, he looks like a Brazilian. So it's an Asian, but he's Brazilian. He is black African, and he is Brazilian. And he is Caucasian, and he is Brazilian. And so that there is just so much of mixture that the counterfeiters have a good time. You cannot say to somebody that he doesn't look like a Brazilian. So it's So in terms of the areas of ministry that we want to get involved is theological education is primary, teaching in seminaries. Sibima is, we're talking about, going to talk about it, is the primary institution that we're going to be connected with, but not the only one. There are other training efforts that we know of and that we have some relationships with that we want to also participate, both inside of Brazil with our mission agency, Brazil Gospel Fellowship Mission, that planted our churches 8 decades ago, and they have moved from our state to other states, and where they are planting churches, they are also starting Bible institutes. So we have some other Bible institutes and seminaries that we want to partner with as part of our connection with Brazil Gospel Fellowship Mission. Teaching Bible background, that's another area of passion in my life. I worked, the pastor who brought me on staff there at Meridian First Baptist Church is Dr. Randy Cook, and he was one of the founders of the IBEX program with the Masters University in Israel. They have a extension program where students go to study for a semester in Israel, and so he spent 15 years in Israel. Before that, he was a missionary in Brazil for a number of years. His parents also were missionaries there, and so he has a connection with Brazil. But so I inherited a lot of his passion for that, for Bible backgrounds and biblical geography, biblical archaeology, and so that's something that he was the one who brought me to Israel to kind of pass on, before his retirement, pass on everything that he knew and his material for me and some other pastors that he chose. So since 2023, I have also led trips to Israel and to help lay people, believers in general, but also raising money to make possible for Brazilian pastors to go, because I know the impact that it has on our understanding of the Bible, our reading of the Bible with 3D glasses now, and with color and with texture, and so we want to continue in that in terms of helping people see the Bible more clearly, and part of that is not only through theological education in the classroom, but also with teaching Bible backgrounds in the context where the Bible was revealed in the land of Israel. So that's we have made trips to Israel, leading people in 2023, and last year we did another one with in English and Portuguese, and next year we have 2 scheduled as well, one in Portuguese, and we have raised money for 5 pastors to go, and other people are welcome to go as well in those, and that's what makes the trip possible anyways, with other people who are not pastors going along, and have one scheduled for January with Brazilians, but also one together with Dr. Randy Cook in English in September next year. So that's something we want to continue doing, and we want to see if we can continue to do that every year or every 2 years to take people there. The other important ministry is translation and publication. Not only we need to equip pastors to handle God's word well, we need to give them resources to be able to research, to be able to study, to prepare sermons, or to write theological articles, to produce theology. We need resources, and we have a lot of books being translated to Portuguese and being produced by Brazilians as well. Most of them are the publishers are motivated to publish are those that sell more. It's the Christian Living book, it's the Biblical Counseling book, it's the other general books, more popular books, and which are very helpful and which are important for the maturity of believers, and so we don't discount the importance of that. But we also see a lack of reference resources, the type of resources that pastors use to study every week to prepare sermons, like commentaries, like Bible dictionaries, manuals, or lexicons, those types of stuff, which take a lot more time and are a lot more expensive to translate and to publish, because they are usually thicker books, and publishers are not so encouraged to publish those because they won't sell a lot. So there needs to be subsidizing of that type of work without a look for profit, and so. But that's the type of work that is extremely necessary for other things to happen. In order to write a Christian Living or Biblical Counseling book, those authors, they need the reference resources to produce their resource, and so we want to get involved with that and coordinating those efforts and making it possible. The other thing is digital reach, and a lot of people are consuming theology from the internet, from longer format like YouTube or podcasts, but also shorter formats like Instagram and Facebook, and so and that's we see that a lot in Brazil, and we are getting involved with that little by little, trying to increase our presence in that arena as well, to make good theology available in those platforms as well. And so we want to increase our reach in that regard. And so I have a friend who is a pastor that we have started the idea of a podcast to where we talk about 1 hour about theology. We did this year, at the beginning of this year, a season because we both at this point in our lives we we don't have a lot of time, so we did in seasons instead of having doing a weekly thing. But we did a season on biblical theology, and so going through different themes of the Bible, like the theme of sacred place, how it starts in the Garden of Eden, go through the tabernacle, go through the temple, and go through through the church and the new temple and the eternal state, how that theme develops, and or the kingdom of God, how that theme develops from Genesis all the way through Revelation. So we did a series of 8 podcasts and 1 hour each on that subject, and to kind of give people a broad perspective on the Bible. And so we want to, as we go back, want to continue to do that. We have done that over Zoom with him, but we want to do face-to-face to continue providing those kinds of digital resources for people to learn good theology. So in terms of ministry partners, our ministry base will be Fortaleza and the state of Ceará, where we grew up, and so we know a lot of churches. We're a part of a fellowship of about 60 churches, and so we know churches in the area of Fortaleza and also in the area where we grew up, and so we are also in conversations about offering some training in the interior of the state where we grew up to train pastors to preach the Word of God, train also lay people to how to study and how to teach a Bible lesson. And so we want to have an eye beyond Fortaleza itself. Our sending church is our current church, Meridian First Baptist, and BGFM Global is the mission agency, Brazil Gospel Fellowship Mission, that we are going with, and they are the ones that started our churches, so we have a long history with them as well. And SIBIMA is an acronym for Seminary and Bible Institute Maranatha. That's the name of what SIBIMA stands for. And so a lot of people have a hard time saying SIBIMA, and so say Maranatha Seminary. So it's a kind of so that's a good way. And so you can see this is the coast of Fortaleza. It's a coastal city. It's a city of 4.5 million people in its metropolitan area. The city itself is 2.5 million, but the metropolitan area, you have 4.5 million people. It's a 4th largest city in population in Brazil, and an important hub in the northeast of the country, with flights to Europe and to the West as well. Not as important as Rio and São Paulo, which are the 2 biggest cities. São Paulo has the city of 22 million people, and Rio about 10 to 12 million people. It's and so that's a picture of our church there, and that's the auditorium of SIBIMA in one of their weekly chapels that they have. So SIBIMA is this is their gym where they do events as well, like conferences. So this is a graduation event, and so today they offer undergraduate programs. That's the main one, and that's probably has about 40 students, I would say, in that program. That's the basic theology pastoral training program that they have, where most pastors are graduate from there and go to their ministries. And they also offer graduate programs today, one in biblical counseling, one in systematic theology, and one in Christian leadership. And so those programs have between 5 and 10 students each. Among those, besides those, there are also some basic theology courses and some ministry support courses, like they have a shorter course of 18 months on theology for lay leaders, or just people who I want to learn more about the Bible and Christian doctrine, and so they can go one night a week, and so for 18 months, and so they have a program for lay people, just a basic program, but also some music and worship that also they have a training there, one that train worship leaders or people who are going to serve as playing instruments as well in churches, and so they have one training in that regard as well. So overall, SIBIMA probably has about 100 students, 120 students between all the programs, and some online. The bachelor's program is also offered fully online as well, with a mentor program as well. And they have also plans to, in the future, to offer a doctorate program as the pool of students graduating from the master's degrees increases. There might be a need in the future to start our first doctorate degree as well there. And so that was one of the reasons that justifies our coming to get further education here, to be able to contribute in those regards. And some other professors are currently pursuing doctorates. The president just got his doctorate last May, and there is one other professor pursuing a doctorate at this point as well. And so we join that effort and be able to contribute with the seminary that way. So in terms of prayers for us, pray for wisdom and perseverance at this stage, and as we are getting ready to go, and fruitfulness once we are in the field, and financial support. We are currently, I know that the pastors passed along our ministry letter to some of you, I don't know, but currently our support is at 27% and we have some commitments waiting to be formalized to us to see to what level we get before we go, but 27% is where we are at right now. And besides that, we have a big international move to make, which will be very expensive, and settling there in the country. So at this stage, besides the monthly support from either churches or individuals and families who want to come alongside us, we also we need also one-time commitments for those big expenses. Our first quote for the move was not very encouraging. It was over 20 grand to move our stuff to Brazil, but we're looking for other quotes to see if we can bring that down a little bit. It was more than we were expecting so we're expecting to be expensive, but not that much. So, and that's the one-time needs, and as we get there to furnish our apartment, we cannot take everything, but buy a car and get established there. So there will be big expenses waiting for us as well. So current needs, family support and funding for moving and settling, and future needs as we get established and we get our full support. One of the things some needs that we will look help from partners would be student scholarships and library development as well. Those kinds of things that we are also in the long term. That's the type of partnerships we are also looking to be able to offer those resources to the ministry, or be related as well. And this is information about where to donate for us. Besides that, I will leave it there, but besides that, we have in a table outside here our prayer cards with also a ministry letter explaining our ministry. We have a short version, one-page version, half-a-page version of our ministry, and also how you can partner with us. And so there is the directions to the website and phone numbers that you can call as well to get some of that information. So get the prayer card together with the letter where you have that information if you want to know how to pray for us and know how to partner with us. And the other thing is we have a newsletter sign up there. There is a manual sign up where you can put your name and you can put your email. But if you are more tech savvy and you want to point your phone camera, there's also a QR code there. This QR code is for our donations page. The QR code over there is for our newsletter sign up, where you can put your name and your email, and you receive our updates. And we invite you to take advantage of that and to get to know our family better. We are at the hour. I don't know if you want to open for any question, like one question that you know will be a quick answer. Yes.
I was curious which countries Brazil sends missionaries to within South America.
Yes. Yeah. So we have missionaries today in Uruguay, Argentina, from our circles only, from our circles, Uruguay, Argentina, and Bolivia, Venezuela, and British Guyana in South America. That's just around us, but we also have missionaries in Portugal, focus more on Portuguese-speaking countries, and Cape Verde, which is a country just west of Africa, is islands outside of Africa, and Guinea-Bissau, which is also speaks Portuguese, and Mozambique is on East Africa, also speaking Portuguese, and yeah, there are some missionaries. I know some missionaries. One preparing to go to Germany, and one in Japan. That's now a friend of ours who is currently in Brazil on furlough, but he's a missionary in Japan, and so that's those countries that our churches, our circle, a closer circle is sending. But I know that Brazilian church in general is sending to many other countries as well. Yeah. So thank you so much for the opportunity. And those of you who are here, I'll have a fly-through version of that presentation for those who are coming just for the service before I preach. And so bear with me for those 10 minutes. Yeah.